This week, we visited Dr. JJ Pursell, owner of the Herb Shoppe franchise. She taught us how to make a medicinal tincture and spoke on how her intuition has been the guiding force in her life.
It started with a thought that was seated inside of me that I always knew would come forth. But as anyone does when they have a dream or they have a thought, they think, oh, that's impossible. But being who I am, I just started manifesting and started to create. And I opened up my first shop in 2005. And the only person that fully supported me was actually a company here in New York called Count Me In. And it was a women's entrepreneur group. And they gave me a loan for $5,000.
Oh, wow.
And that was the only thing I needed to say, I can do this. Was just that one person to believe in me and what I was doing. The goal mainly was to create a place where people could come, they could be educated and reminded of the skills and the tools that we all used to have to take care of ourselves. And plants have grown around us, and we've used plants as medicine for as long as there is recorded history. But we've traveled away from that, and there's been just a lack of knowledge and education. So the shop was a place where I could bring that back to our community. And at the time it was just Portland. And I used to travel here to Brooklyn to see family and friends. And every time I would come, people would say, please open a shop. And I thought, gosh, how could I do that? And then one day I had this kind of miraculous day, you know, where you see the beautiful sunrise and you have interactions with people, and it's just one of those very intention-filled days. And I remember looking in the mirror and saying, yes, I want to open a shop in Brooklyn. So 2 months later, I came here and I just thought, you know what, I'm just going to walk the street. And I had my little baby at the time, and we walked the street, and there's a little tiny window in this sign that said space for lease. I was a single mom at the time, so I lived in the back of the shop with my little girl. We had a cot and a pack and play, and I set up the shop and worked, you know, through the night. We've opened up a second location in Portland to help full production and distribution, so we can start franchising the shop and growing it to let other people in their communities heal.
For people who maybe haven't been to the herb shop before, or even haven't seen a naturopath before, what that role is,
Sure.
and what that can be, and what sort of you can come here looking for.
It's a bridging place for people to come, explore other options to take care of themselves, and return some of that responsibility back to themselves to do what's best for their own bodies.
So you have a thriving naturopath practice. You have your store in Portland, you have your little baby, and you're single and you're doing this on your own. And then you come to New York and then you decide to open a shop, another shop.
Mm-hmm.
And when you talked about it, you were very like, and then I just did this. But that's big and that's huge, and that can be really scary. I sort of am wondering like what fears you had and how you found, what sort of inner resolve and strength guided you into making the choices, these brave choices that you've made.
If I don't listen to my inner intuition, bad things are going to happen. Or I'm going to be unhappy. And I learned that a long time ago, and definitely through, you know, the earlier part of my youth and young adulthood, I didn't listen to it, and I was always being led astray. And every time I would be like, I knew it, and I didn't listen to it. And I just started to really listening and responding to that. It's still very scary to open a business 3,000 miles away from my home. But every time, again, like I would come here and just the whole progression of what happened, it unfolded itself so readily that I knew that it was the right thing to do. Even if the worst thing happens and it doesn't actually work out on paper or in real life, it was the path that I was supposed to do, and I have to trust that. And with each step that's been growing, I bring in more people. Like, I create more jobs of people who are passionate about the same things that I am. And I create more opportunity for people to feel safe and secure in their interest of wanting this to be a part of their life, where it's kind of been hidden for so long. Mm-hmm. And so it's just that inner trust. And that's definitely been cultivated, and it's not an easy thing. to really believe and count on. But for me personally, I just had to make that choice of listening all the time to what my inner intuition was saying and know that I would be guided safely. And then, you know, as I got a little older and started finding my way, it was all about mentorship. You know, it's finding the people that bring out what's in you, you know, and reassure you that what's in you is great and beautiful and inspiring. And so that was my path after really, you know, kind of finding it on my own, but still being very unsure, and finding those teachers that could reassure me.
You have a deep meditative relationship with these herbs, and as a result have really been able to like incorporate their healing power when you help other people. Is there a particular herb that really has just like that grounded you in that, or that you find yourself drawn to again and again?
You know, rosemary is a strong herb for me, and I refer to them as allies, because when you sit with a plant and you use a plant, it'll become very clear if it's an ally for you or not. And what that means is that it'll help you in some way. It might help calm your mind. It might help soothe the burn on your hand. And rosemary in general for me is it's such a sturdy, strong plant, but it's beautiful and it's very aromatic. But traditionally, when herbal medicine started to need to be protected because people were prosecuted against using it, rosemary was the plant that was always grown outside the healer's house. So if you were traveling and you needed medicine and you saw a rosemary plant, you always knew that was a safe place to go. And so she's this very guiding, comforting, mothering type of plant, and so soothing for so many different things, that I often am drawn to her, and she's what's on the logo, rosemary, because she just kind of protects us and guides us.
Can you tell us a little more about like how you discovered your connection sort of to plants and herbal medicine?
So my dad lived out on a farm, and he had a flower farm. When you're raised outside all the time, you do have a kind of different connection to the soil and to the air and the sun and the seasons. There was a tree. There was a weeping willow tree by my house. And every time I was upset, or every time I had really good news, that was where I went first. And I bonded with this tree. And it was just this connection with this plant that was never going to let me down. It wasn't ever going to judge me, and it always just made me feel good no matter what was happening. And so that was the strongest connection, and development was through that tree. So we're going to just show you a quick demonstration of how to make a tincture. One of the things that I always come into contact with in the shop are people who are feeling a lot of stress. So herbs that we reach for are called nervines, and nervines are herbs that really help relax the central nervous system so that you can feel a little more in control of your life and a little more calm in your mind. So the first one we reach for over here is skullcap. And skullcap's one of my favorites. It's a nice, strong central nervous system supporter, and it really works on calming what we call the monkey mind. So if you tend to fall asleep at night and your mind starts pinging all around about the lists and the things you forgot to do and what needs to happen, this really helps kind of calm that down so that you can relax and know that everything's going to be okay. Oat straw, which is the oat plant, is another great nervine, along with passion flower. These two are basically strengthening and supporting the central nervous fibers of your brain and your central nervous system to not fire so quickly and rapidly all the time. These two beauties will just help to kind of calm and soothe from a physiological level those nerve endings and coat them and help them to not be so reactive. Okay? And then I always like to add just a little bit of rose, because rose actually helps to calm the heart. A lot of us have a lot of stressful situations, whether it's at work, in relationships, with children, and the rose just helps to kind of calm the heart, make us feel good about ourselves, and that way we can react better and within our communities and families. What I've done here is I've mixed up the herbs all together and put them in this jar. When you're working with dried herbs, it's a 1:5 ratio. So when you're working with dried herbs, you're going to fill the herbs up 1/5 of whatever container that you have, and the rest of it's just going to be vodka. Okay, if you're using fresh herbs, like you're going out to your garden and picking plants, you're going to fill it up halfway and then fill it up with vodka. Okay, so basically you're just going to take this, pour it in. You're going to close it up and you're going to shake it. And there it is. Now this is going to go sit in your cupboard. Dark, cool place. But every day you're going to pick it up and you're going to shake it. Because if you don't agitate it, the cell wall has a harder time breaking down. It's the agitation and the mixing with the vodka and the plant that helps to break it apart and get, like I said, all those good medicinal qualities out of all of these plants into the liquid form. From there, after 2 to 4 weeks, your preference. Leaving it longer isn't going to make it stronger or do anything like that. You're going to strain it out just with a kitchen strainer and bottle it up. Then you have your first tincture.